The column had been visible since the 6th hour of walking, a black needle in the white nothing, and I had not stopped moving toward it once. That was the thing no one in the debrief could fully explain. Not Coordinator Pesh, not the xenoarchaeology team, not the 3 survey leads who had come before me and turned around at distances ranging from 4 kilometers to 800 meters. None of them remembered deciding to stop. They simply had. Legs went heavy. The will to continue dissolved like salt in standing water. They turned back, filed their reports, and described the column as unapproachable without specifying why. The Dravos Basin survey had been running for 11 months. No human had reached the column. No instrument planted within 2 kilometers of it had transmitted more than a few minutes of data before going quiet. I was the 9th person to attempt the walk. I was a geological surveyor, not a specialist. I had been added to the rotation because 2 xenoarchaeologists had developed separate respiratory complaints and Coordinator Pesh needed a body to complete the grid. My job was to walk the eastern approach line, log the surface composition at marked intervals, and return. The column was not my assignment. It was simply in the direction I was already going. Dos walked beside me for the first 4 hours. He was the better surveyor, more methodical, more patient, always the one who caught what I missed. Around the 7th kilometer mark he slowed without saying anything. I noticed because his bootfalls had been a steady rhythm behind me since dawn, and then they weren't. I turned and he was standing with his arms loose at his sides and his eyes on the column, not moving. Dos. He blinked. I'm going to log the secondary grid, he said, like it was something he'd been planning all morning. There was no secondary grid. I knew that and he knew that. But his voice was calm and his face was calm and he turned north and began walking in a direction that had nothing of interest in it, and I watched him go for a moment and then I faced the column again and kept walking. I didn't feel brave. I want to be clear about that. I felt the weight in my legs the same as anyone. There was a pressure somewhere behind my sternum that I couldn't name, not pain exactly, more like the feeling before a thunderstorm when the air has gone wrong and your body knows something your mind hasn't caught yet. The white salt flats spread out in every direction, cracked into irregular polygons, and the column stood at the center of it all like a monument to silence. I logged my intervals. I noted the surface composition. I kept walking because I had a line to complete and it ran straight through the column's position and stopping felt like giving up on something I hadn't even started yet. At 3 kilometers the glyphs began. They were not visible before that. I had studied the survey imagery carefully. The column appeared featureless in every photograph, a smooth obsidian surface that reflected the pale white sun without warmth. But at 3 kilometers a line of script ignited at the column's base, just above the salt, a thin band of cold blue light that pulsed once and then held. I logged it, noted the time, kept walking. At 2 kilometers a second band ignited above the first. At 1.5, a third. The pattern was clear by then. The glyphs were climbing the column in response to my approach, and only my approach. I could see Dos a kilometer north, a small figure moving slowly across the flat, and nothing on the column responded to him. The bands lit only when I stepped forward. I stopped once, for 30 seconds, to reset my instrument pack, and the newest band dimmed slightly and then held, waiting. When I walked again it brightened. The pressure behind my sternum was stronger now. Not stopping me, just present. At 500 meters the basin shuddered. It was not a large tremor. The salt cracked in new places around my boots, fresh lines radiating outward, and somewhere behind me I heard Dos call my name. He'd seen it from his position, had turned to watch. I raised a hand in his direction without looking back. The column was now large enough that I had to tilt my head to see its top. 40 meters of black stone with 9 bands of cold blue script blazing from base to midpoint, and the upper half still dark and featureless against the white sky. At 200 meters the surface of the column changed. The obsidian, which had appeared perfectly smooth in every image I'd seen, revealed itself as anything but. What I had taken for a blank face was a surface covered in fine line carving so dense and precise that it only became visible close up, thousands of characters packed into every centimeter, a record of something written so small it would take a lifetime to read. The blue light moved through those carvings in waves, illuminating sections and letting them go dark and illuminating others, cycling through the record at a pace I couldn't follow. Like a machine running through its own memory. Like something checking what it knew. I stopped at 100 meters and pulled out my field scanner. The reading made no sense. The column's material composition shifted with every pass, obsidian, then something with no match in the database, then a crystalline structure that the scanner flagged as architecturally organized rather than naturally occurring. The age estimate ran the same calculation 4 times and returned the same result each time. 10,240 years, plus or minus a century. The scanner added a note that the margin of error was negligible. It was confident. Whatever had made this thing had been dead for 10 millennia. I put the scanner away and walked the last 100 meters. The bands of light had reached the column's top by then, all 40 meters lit, the entire surface cycling through its memory in waves of cold blue. The air around the base smelled like ozone and something older, like the inside of a cave that hadn't been opened in generations. The salt at the column's base was undisturbed. No footprints from any previous approach team, no instrument casings, no evidence that anyone had ever stood here. The column had simply waited, patient as stone, while the years went past. I stopped in front of it and looked up. Then I did what I always do at the end of a line. I reached out and put my hand flat on the surface. The carvings under my palm were warm. The light did not explode. It did not blind me or knock me down or fill the basin with sound. What it did was stop cycling. Every band of script on the column went still at once, all 40 meters of it holding a single arrangement of characters rather than running through the sequence. The column had been searching through something, and it had found what it was looking for, and it stopped. Then it spoke. The voice did not come from any point on the column surface. It came from inside my chest, from the same place the pressure had been sitting all morning, and it resolved into 4 words as clear and unhurried as anything I had ever heard. You did not stop. Not a question. Not a greeting. A statement of a fact, delivered with the weight of something that had been waiting a very long time to say it. The language was not any language I knew, but I understood it the way you understand a word you've known your whole life without ever hearing it spoken aloud. It arrived complete. It needed no translation because it was not addressed to my ears. I stood with my hand on the warm stone and I thought about the 11 months of failed approaches. I thought about Doss turning north for no reason he could name. I thought about the 3 survey leads who had stopped at distances ranging from 4 kilometers to 800 meters and had never been able to explain why. I thought about whatever civilization had planted this thing in the middle of a salt flat on a world that had been lifeless for as long as any record showed, and I thought about what they must have been looking for, and I thought about the fact that they had never found it, and had died anyway, and had left this column running on some power source we could not measure, waiting. They had built something to recognize the one quality they could not manufacture in themselves. The quality of not stopping. I am not a remarkable person. I want to be clear about that too. I am a geological surveyor from a mid-tier contract company. I have 2 ex-partners and a standing arrangement with a coffee vendor near the transit hub on Pesh Station because I spend more time in survey rotations than anywhere I might call home. I am not brave. I am not special. I simply have, for as long as I can remember, found it harder to stop than to continue. It is not a virtue. It is just the shape of me, the way some people find it easy to quit and some people find it easy to keep going, and I have always been the second kind without knowing why or thinking much about it. The column knew why. Whatever built, it had spent 10,000 years filtering for exactly this. Not strength. Not lineage. Not knowledge or power or divine selection. Just the one thing that cannot be faked or inherited or bestowed, the refusal to lie down when the weight says lie down. I stood there for a long time. The column's light had stabilized into a pattern I didn't recognize, all 40 meters of script fixed on a single page of its record, illuminated and still. Like something at rest for the first time in millennia. Like something that had finished waiting. Eventually, I lowered my hand. I turned around. Doss was standing 200 meters back, perfectly still, watching. The expression on his face was the one I'd seen on people who had witnessed something they had no frame for. Not frightened, not joyful, just recalibrated. Like the world had quietly updated its own rules and he was still working out what the new ones were. I walked back across the salt to where he stood. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, what did it say? I looked back at the column. It was lit from base to crown, all 40 meters of it, patient and bright against the white sky. It said I didn't stop, I told him. He nodded slowly, the way you nod when an answer explains everything and nothing at the same time. We walked back to the base camp. I filed my geological survey report first, because the line still needed completing, and then I filed the approach log, and then I sat in the instrument bay for a long time without doing anything. Coordinator Pesh came and found me there around the 14th hour and said the xenoarchaeology team wanted a full debrief when I was ready. I said I'd be ready in the morning. That night I lay in my bunk and looked at the ceiling and thought about 10,000 years of silence and what it meant that the thing waiting inside had not been waiting for a king or a savior or someone with the right blood. It had been waiting for someone who would not stop walking. I thought about all the humans I knew who fit that description. Ordinary people with ordinary lives, moving forward through ordinary difficulty, not because they were called to it, but because stopping never felt like an option. I thought about how many of us there were. I thought about what a civilization might have given anything to find, at the end of its time, when the stopping was already done. The column was still lit when I looked out the bunk window. 40 meters of cold blue light in the white dark of the basin, holding its page. I closed my eyes and went to sleep. In the morning I got up, drank my coffee, and went to the debrief. The column was still waiting when I came out. It has been waiting since. I suspect it will keep waiting, patient as stone, because it has learned something it didn't know before, and things that have waited 10,000 years are not in any hurry. Neither am I.